Oh God, it's recording. Just cut everything I say
Yeah.
to be safe. To be
A
safe.
30-second episode.
Why don't you go ahead and just call me Anthony? I go by Tony, but just for the sake of clarity in the recording, that's fine.
And then for you, Tony, it'll be Tony, right?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Call Tony Tony. Got it.
Call Tony Tony. All right, that works for me.
We almost squashed the entire collaboration based on our first names being the same. We're like, we can't do this. It's just, it's not going to work.
Welcome to another episode of Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Brennan LaFaro. Say hi, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are titling this episode Tommy and the Order of the Cosmic Champions, because we have the two creators for that book and, well, that universe. Those two are Anthony the Great. We're going to call him Tony tonight. Say hi, Tony.
Hello.
And Anthony Rapino, we are just going to refer to him as Anthony. Say hi, Anthony.
Hey, everybody.
To avoid confusion, two Anthonys, so Tony and Anthony. It's great to have you guys on. And this, I mean, what a book, what a everything you guys have done we're going to cover tonight. But my God, Brennan, I want you to open with the first question because you were the one that came up with it, and it's a good one.
Oh, good. All right. So, no, I want to. Yeah, exactly. No pressure here. I want to start right at the beginning. I want to, Tony, I'm going to throw it to you. I want to know where the idea for this entire thing originated. So give us a little bit of the lowdown.
Okay. Well, the idea was kind of born out of some of my childhood experiences growing up. My sister and I went through, our parents divorcing and all that entailed, and the lead up to it was kind of becoming to us that Dad wasn't much, and things were happening, and and once he was finally gone, it was a struggle. And at that time, I was heavily into a few different toy lines and cartoons, and so those kind of became an escape for me. That and several other things, but for the purposes of the story, there was one event in particular that I remember pretty vividly, and that was when the Mattel had held a create a character contest, and it was nationwide, so kids from all across America could submit designs and have that turned into an action figure, and then they would receive a college scholarship, and then they would be president for a day. I think it's more of a just kind of a way of an honor, basically. Not really. He didn't have much say in anything, but and I thought, well, that sounds great to me, because I was big into art. I loved drawing. I loved creating. So I entered and didn't win, and was disappointed, and the actual winning designs, I didn't understand why they were chosen. It kind of, as a kid, I was just blown away by how these designs could have won. Why didn't they choose mine? So it went down as like a kind of a big disappointment to me, and I don't know why. It's one of those things that just stuck out through the years, but it did. And then much later, probably around the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, I don't know if you know Matt from Dinosaur Dracula, or have ever visited his website or anything. He used to have a website called X Entertainment, and I used to frequent it quite a bit. And he had posted something on there, basically just asking the question, whatever happened to Fearless Photog, which was his creation, the creation of the winner, Nathan Bittner. He wondered what had happened, with this character. It never was turned into a toy like promised. He did get his scholarship, and he did get the honor of being president for a day, but the figure never became a toy, and the line kind of died, shortly thereafter. And instead of being about the figure, it kind of became more about Nathan, the winner, Nathan Bittner. What happened to him? All of the members of his site were just digging around trying to find any information they could. It was fairly early still on the internet, so the idea that you could dig up somebody's personal history so easily was still kind of a novelty. It was still fairly new. But they did, dig up a lot of things, and probably some of them weren't true or embellished. But you kind of develop this view of him as this. He struggled through life, after his win. Like all of us do. Life comes and brings with it challenges, and he had his own sets of challenges. And so I kind of, after finding that out, I kind of grew to appreciate, his win, his character. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat, to be able to go back in time and, visit him and, remind him to enjoy it, while he can, because, difficulties are coming. And it just kind of stuck with me, that whole idea of traveling to visit him or getting in contact with him. And so when I brought a couple of ideas to Anthony about, maybe we could work together on a novel. I have a couple of stories, and here's one of them, and he was pretty excited about this particular idea. And so he took that little seed that I gave him and turned it into a tree. He blossomed it from there.
Very cool. Very cool. I love the idea of it had to be set, in that kind of 1980s, the Saturday morning cartoons, that whole universe. It just, obviously you pulled from your own childhood to kind of create that universe. And there's a certain quality to the cartoons back then that, the Cosmic Champions certainly takes off after. And, one of those is Masters of the Universe, and you reference it, and you even go like full multiverse there, which is such a cool little Easter egg, if you will. What were some of the other cartoons that kind of influenced the creation of some of the characters?
Well, probably Thundercats would be another. Mask. Those three cartoons were pretty influential to me. They were big influences in my art, and there were others that were less similar. Transformers, GoBots, and those types of shows. But yeah, definitely Thundercats, definitely Mask were influences there in creating characters and the mythos of the Order of Cosmic Champions, and yeah, definitely those three.
So Anthony, I want to throw it to you now. So you get a couple of pitches thrown at you to potentially work on a novel, and this is the one you guys kind of settle on. So what was it that appealed to you?
Honestly, everything about it just sang out to me. If I remember correctly, the first pitch was more sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one was more sci-fi, and it was also a lot more fleshed out. Like, it felt like, a lot had been written, a lot had been put together. And I figured if I was going to do something like this, I really wanted to sort of be able to just write, because it's kind of like how I work anyway. And this one, yeah, when Tony told me about it, I was like, oh, come on now, right? We have kind of like that little bit of 80s charm going on there. And I immediately saw potential for, obviously this isn't a horror novel, but I immediately saw a little potential for some creepy factor here and there, throwing in the Halloween season and all that, trying to find a little bit of a balance, I guess you could say, between what I normally would write and this project. But yeah, I mean, I'm so into the 80s and 90s nostalgia stuff that the chance to get to write about things like, you know, just kind of throw stuff in there like Nintendo games and the movies that I love was exciting to me.
Everything about this.
So go ahead, Pat.
I was just going to say everything about this. It just screams like someone turned this into a movie, specifically for the fact that you have so much IP that you could sell, which is what you guys are doing. But I'm saying on a grander scale, and the story is really, really good too. Brennan, go ahead, man.
I was just gonna say, you know, once you guys settle on that idea, and you know the gears are turning. So what happens next?
You know, it sort of coalesced very quickly and a lot more easily than I would have expected. I set up a Discord server for the two of us. We kind of had the different forums for the different aspects of the novel, and as I remember it, and correct me, you know, if I get anything wrong, Tony, because my memory sometimes is a little shoddy. But as I remember it, we had a couple of very brief discussions about kind of the background, what we wanted to happen in the novel. I asked a lot of questions like, what are you expecting out of this for Tony? And we just had a lot of the same ideas, which made it super easy. There were a lot of parallels that ended up running throughout the entire project where we both just happened to be on the same page. And once I had that sort of skeleton of an idea, if I remember, our discussion kind of landed on, we had the basic summary, we had an idea of the major turning points, and we had a basic understanding of like where it would end as well, without there being too much detail there. I just started writing. I would stream my writing sessions live, so whenever Tony felt like he needed to be bored by something, he could always pop on the writing stream and kind of, you know, take a nap or whatever. And I would share chapters as I went. If I had any questions about it, I would shoot them over to Tony. But largely, I kind of focused on the writing during that portion. And that whole time, Tony was just hard at work on 1,000,001 things that I couldn't even outline quickly for you, including art and cover design and marketing and soundtracks and just all this stuff that you can see in the outcome here.
Yeah. And I'm just imagining Tony checking in on your live stream just to make sure you're actually doing the work, that you're not slacking off at all. So, Tony, how about those 1,000,001 things you were doing while Anthony was doing the writing? Give us, I mean, we can kind of, for audio listeners, you know, you're going to have to go to the website and see all this. Video listeners, you can kind of see in Patrick's background. No Patrick, but you could see all this stuff. You know, including, you know, the cover design is just absolutely phenomenal. Just perfectly sets the tone for what we've got here. We've got, you know, comics. We've got a cassette tape, sort of. For those of us who actually have a cassette player, unfortunately, it will not work, but that's because it's just been brought into the 21st century. So, sorry, Tony, I asked a question, then I just kept talking. Tell us about all that stuff.
So, going back to what Anthony was saying about being on the same page, there are several elements of the story that, as I was reading it, I know I did not say anything about, no, I did not mention to him, and yet I could see it perfectly in my head. It was almost like he was reading my mind and putting it down on the page, because especially the layout of Tommy's house and the interior in particular, and different things like that I thought, I don't recall ever discussing this at all with him. So it was kind of like this spooky, connection going on there. But with regard to all the merchandise and everything, when I tend to go overboard when I get invested in something. It could be pretty much anything, but I wanted this to be more than just, a story that somebody picks up on occasion and, puts it down and maybe they enjoy it, but there's nothing else to it. Wanted there to be like some tactile, something that they could hold in their hand, things that they could interact with that kind of brought Tommy's world into our world. And so that's why I started digging into things that I had no experience with at all. Having action figures, never once dealt with anything like that. And that was a whole process getting into, every little detail of that, and having media created, like, an animated intro, dealing with an animation company and writing scripts and, storyboards and things like that. All of that stuff was all new experiences for me, and it just kind of gave a way to be helping, in some fashion, while still, letting out that creativity while he was, creating, the story. I could be over here creating something, to go along with it. And that's what made it really enjoyable. And still is. I'm still doing different things, and especially in relation to marketing and promotion and things like that. So,
I became convinced that you were kind of on the other end, sort of plotting ways to blow my mind daily, to just be like, you know what I'm going to tell him today? We're going to create action figures. Seriously, he would just message me, oh, by the way, we're going to have an action figure. Like, what? Because I had no idea. I honestly had not a single idea as to the scope of what you were going to be working on, Tony, on the other end. Like all of that stuff was a complete surprise to me as we were working. And it really was like just a daily blow your mind session.
That's awesome. How'd you guys initially meet each other? And by the way, viewers/listeners, Tony Rapino was on the show first on episode 102. That's season 2. And we did talk about this book, but it's been like a year. July 15th is when I published that episode. So yeah, it's been a little while. Got to refresh my memory.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what I said on that podcast.
I have no idea. I don't know.
We met initially, and I don't remember how I came across your website, Tony. It was probably just one of those things that either someone posted it or I saw an ad for it or whatever. But Tony runs a website called retrodays.org. And I found myself there somehow. And it's just an amazing site with a ton of great stuff to do. It gives you opportunity to write articles and win, earn points to redeem in a point store. And there's a forum there. And, it's all about retro stuff and kind of spoke to me. So I spent quite a bit of time there. Early on, I think I may have won a writing contest there. I did. I won it was a video game writing contest, and I won a really cool, I still have it over there. Is it Robbie the Robot? It's the robot that came with the Nintendo.
Yeah.
And it was a lamp.
The NES. You talking about the NES, that robot?
Yes.
I think Robbie. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Robbie.
And it was a lamp made out of the robot. So, just really a lot of cool opportunities there. But yeah, that's how I don't know that we spoke at that point, but then at some point we ended up collaborating. I did a bunch of sculptures for the goodie boxes on your site. I did like the trick or treat lollipops, Sam's trick or treat lollipops, and Sam unmasked masked magnets, and Tony goodie boxes and the point store and stuff that he was doing there. So that was our first collaboration, actually, many years ago.
That's
really cool. So, all right. I'm curious what... Nope. Before I jump there, I want to hear one of you guys describe the plot, because I don't think we've actually talked about it yet.
Probably Anthony's better suited for that.
Oh, God. I knew you were going to throw me under the bus. I'm honestly the worst at this. It's truly one of my great horrors in life, describing the stuff I write, because people do, you guys know, all the time. Someone say, well, what's this one about? And I am crap at it.
This is real quick. This is episode, I think, 156, 157. Nobody's good at this.
Nope. Nope. No one.
It's about a young boy named Tommy Grate. And I have to, sorry to interrupt my own summary, but I still almost use your name, Tony, sometimes when I'm talking about the character, because the names were a little similar.
Yes.
Due to the origins of the plot. But
and you even mentioned that at some point, I think Miranda says something about you look more like a Tony.
Yeah. I had to throw in these little Easter eggs like that. But so young Tommy is having a hard time at home. His parents are struggling with a pending or possible divorce. He's being bullied, and life just isn't treating him very well. So he puts everything he has into the idea of winning this create a character contest for the Order of Cosmic Champions. And, it really builds up to the point where this is his whole life is hinging on him winning this in his mind. It's that big to him. And, spoiler alert, he does not win. And around this time, he starts seeing the characters from the Order of Cosmic Champions, and specifically the winning design, which kind of taunts him a little bit. From that point, he decides that his only hope is to go find the winner of the contest and plead with him to ask the company, using his power as president of the day, which was one of the winning prizes, to make Tommy's action figure and allow him at least a little bit of the glory. And I think that's it.
Fierce Phantos is that character that taunts him, and that guy. I do a lot of text to speech, and I was just laughing out loud because he's fun. Like when he does, when he tries telling Tommy which way to go, it's like an arrow or run, or just little stuff like that. So when I was describing this wife to my book, I said it makes me feel like a kid. Like it's kind of like Stranger Things in the sense of the setting, but it also makes you feel like a kid from when we all grew up. Just all the elements of you can fight monsters, you can anything. There's no real line between quote unquote reality and kids' dreams, and it's everything, as you said, Anthony, is grandiose because you have nothing to reference it to. You have nothing to reference it to in comparison when you're an adult and you have like a mortgage and you're like, well, keeping this job is important, or I'm fucked. Not if I don't win this contest, I think it's the end of the world. So all that said, it's just it's a truly a magical book. You guys did a great job.
That means a lot. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the Phantos character. I had particular fun playing around with that. I don't think we really mentioned this part of it, but an interesting aspect of the writing as it was going is that, as you know, like the first few chapters, there aren't really a whole lot of fantasy elements.
It's a setup. You're setting it up. You're building it.
Right, exactly. And so through that time, anytime I had to mention any of the characters from the Order of Cosmic Champions, we didn't really have that set yet. And I was using these really like just poorly thought out names that I just came up with as like placeholders for the whole thing. And it was crazy though, because like as I was writing, it was another one of those like daily blow your mind kind of things that Tony would send me messages like, okay, here's the new character, and it'd be art for it and like a whole background of the character. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like a character sketch. I could just kind of input it right into the novel. And they sort of came as I was writing. So it was this, I like the discovery of writing. When I write, it's all about that, like, Stephen King talks about it in On Writing, that sort of uncovering of the fossil as you write. And this was truly like that for me. And having Tony on the other end, just feeding the inspiration of the entire Order of Cosmic Champions mythology, all of the characters, as far as their backstories and their designs and all that, was Tony, feeding that stuff to me.
That's That's excellent. And I'm not going to spoil this, but the ending, life isn't always, wrapped up like a nice, pretty ribbon. But the way that this particular chapter in Tommy's life ended, it was not only hopeful, it just made you smile from ear to ear. And I want to hear, Brennan, as a reader, without spoiling anything, what your reaction was
to the ending.
Yeah, because for me, it just felt like a warm hug. You felt good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's so much of the story kind of relies on a sense of nostalgia, and it hits those notes throughout. But there's also a certain realism, and again, we're treading lightly here for fear of telling people exactly what the end is. But it's not this. It's not a cookie cutter ending where. No, that's a dead end. Okay, so basically, I'm going to go with realism. There's an authenticity to it that makes it believable, and we want Tommy to be this character that we inhabit, that we can relate to, that maybe we were. And if everything is too tidy and too clean, then that ability to relate flies out the window, and that doesn't happen. We're able to kind of keep that sense. One thing I want to throw out there, I'm so interested in, I don't know whose department this would be. You have some really interesting blurbs on the back of the book. Anthony Michael Hall, Corey Feldman, Joey Lawrence. How did those come about?
I'm waiting for someone to do the catchphrase.
I'm not good at impressions. It ain't gonna be me.
That is a whole other story. That's like it was something that I was familiar with already. Thankfully, people who cameo know that you can contact celebrities through that, and they will give little video announcements or things of that nature for loved ones and such. But some, if you push them hard enough, will will do other things for you. Ooh. And I had reached several celebrities and asked, "Hey, will you read this entire book and then review it?" And then thinking, "Oh, nobody's ever going to contact me back. They're just going to delete this, and it'll just be one of those things that doesn't happen." But to my surprise, almost every one of them responded, and were like, "Oh yeah, sure, send it over." And now some of them haven't got used to me yet, and probably they won't. Who knows? But some big ones that I was really hoping would follow through did, particularly Corey Feldman and Anthony Michael Hall, and I actually got to speak on the phone with Anthony Michael Hall 2 times. And we went over, some of the story elements and, different things and discussions that were totally off topic. And I thought, in what other world, in what other universe would I have done this? Would this have happened at all? So it was just another one of those things where this book created, these experiences for both of us that we'd never have had otherwise. So yeah, they're really just totally awesome people, in general. Basically, Nicole Eggert, she was also really game for it and just enjoyed it as well. So that was a lot of fun.
Talk about those daily blow your mind moments. That was a big one the day that Tony sent me a 14-minute video that Corey Feldman shot talking about our novel. What?
Yeah,
well, it's not on your bingo card.
So, Tony, I got to say, I have thought about Cameo to reach out to people, but I wasn't sure if that would work. And you just answered my question. Yeah. First off, that's fucking cool. Secondly, thank you for teaching me a new route for so many things. And as podcasters, it's relatable to looking for blurbs. I mean, what other, you can't, you can, I guess, but if you don't have something kind of to connect with someone else, what excuse are you going to have to do this stuff? Because that book with those blurbs is going to last a lifetime, and your kids are going to see that, and that's a brag moment right there.
Well, and I think it's worth throwing out too. I just finished reading this summer David Morrell, the guy who wrote First Blood. He has an on-writing book called The Successful Novelist, and one thing he talks about doing is, everybody expects to turn your book over, and it'd be great to have a blurb from Stephen King, from James Patterson, or from whoever the writer du jour is. But he talks about obtaining blurbs from people kind of outside that market. The specific example he gives is he wrote a book about urban explorers. So he reached out to these people who have like tremendous YouTube followings, who have had like shows on Bravo and whatnot. And he gets them to blurb it because they kind of, they expand the audience that you could potentially expose your book to. And I think this is a perfect example of it. Like, yeah, you could have, shot for, a coming of age author who was big in the 80s, and that would have been cool. But this is a whole other market that these names tap into, and how appropriate to have the actor who was in the Goonies to talk about a book that captures that same spirit.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought process there, was who would I, as not necessarily the most avid reader, what would catch my attention, if I were to see it, especially, being from, Generation X, and what name would I look at and say, hey, well, I know who that is. And if they think it's, halfway decent, then maybe I should give this a shot. And so that was the idea behind that, is if I can't, how difficult would it be to reach out to, other authors and obtain blurbs, but maybe somebody who's picking this up may not know who that is or what that book is that they wrote. But when you're tapping into the zeitgeist, particularly of the 80s, these names are hard to not know about. These are hard to not be familiar with. So that was kind of the idea there.
And thank God for you, because I am terrible at marketing. I am the worst at it. I don't know what I'm doing when I'm trying to market a book.
Well,
you just gotta.
So.
Go ahead, Tony. You just got to team up with somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. Obviously, you cracked the code.
That's right.
I do gotta say that you have the greatest package, and I just want to thank you on air for all this stuff behind me, because that is something that I'm going to make sure is out of my son's ability to touch and destroy. He's at that tender age of 2.5, and everything's a toy. And one day I want him to check this out, because this is really cool stuff. And
once the action figures are completed, I'll be sure to send some your way, so that way you have the actual toys.
Oh, I don't know what to say.
Just getting real excited here.
Yeah, inappropriate comment. Boner. What?
That's inappropriate.
So Tony's like, Anthony's like, why the fuck did I come back?
Yeah.
Oh, this is why I'm here.
Yeah. I'd just like to point out, Patrick, that you just said you have the greatest package.
Oh shit! No, I don't. I'm Irish, so
yeah, that's going in the preview. So
if you want, just for you, sunshine. So let's move on to the book or anything else, please.
Let's move on to the soundtrack.
Yes.
Specifically the main theme, because obviously so much of this cycles around a Saturday morning cartoon, and as we all know, those Saturday morning cartoons did not skimp on the theme songs. They go hard. So you had Stan Bush compose the main theme for it. What did you ask for, basically?
So that was another one of those messages that I sent away expecting no answer, but I think I simply connected with him on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, and I just said, I'd really like to have a theme created for this project that we're working on. And I know you're probably pretty busy and, have tours and whatnot, but if you're interested, just get in contact with me and we can work something out. And it was a matter of like a couple of days, and I had an email. And all I did was see his name, and I was like, yes, yeah. I know what this is gonna say. I just felt it. He was gonna be on board with it. And man, he was such a nice guy. I mean, he asked, a few details. What would you like in it? And, but he pretty much within a day or two already had the tune, pretty well in his mind. He said, I know what I want to do with this. And it was such a short time before he had, put it together. But it sounds like something that took, months, to perform and put together, and did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I mean, I legitimately love that song. Every once in a while I go on. So another thing that Tony set up was some advertising on a channel called, was it Dave's Archives, right? On YouTube. And I was actually just talking to someone else on Instagram about this, or Twitter, that I didn't know about the ad. And I had just happened to like throw on one of Dave's Archives commercial blocks of 80s commercials. And there it is, the advertisement for a novel.
That's so cool.
I was like, wait a minute. And it has just a little clip of the song. And I swear, every time I see it, it's just stuck in my head for the rest of the day.
It ticks all the right boxes. It's got, it kicks off with like the heavy synth. When the drums come in, they've got that like arena reverb on them. Obviously the vocals are just, straight out of the 80s. And I mean, you even got like the key change in the chorus that, only happened for about 10 years and then people stopped doing it.
True. Yeah, you don't hear that much anymore.
Anthony, how's it feel to play in someone else's playground and now it's just a shared playground between you and Tony? Like, I like we talked about it when you were on. I'm still in the creation stage, but I want to know if you feel like this, where it's intimidating. For me, it was intimidating at first because I'm like, well, it's his vision. I'm gonna fuck it up, and then you're starting to do that, and then before you know it, you're like just best buddies, and you're in it together. So I'm curious. It feels like from the first time you talked about this to me that's kind of your experience too.
Yeah, I'm of two minds on this. On the one side, I absolutely agree. I wouldn't say I was intimidated, but I was incredibly worried about not fulfilling your vision, Tony. I was like, I'm going to screw this up. He's not going to like what I'm doing here. I'm going to write 30,000 words and he's just going to say, you know what, let's just forget it. Which is why I set up the Discord with the daily live streams and sending him the sample chapters.
That is so smart.
I was just so nervous about that. I'm like, I think I even prefaced when we first decided to do something, like, I'm a horror writer. I don't know if I can do this justice. We'll give it a shot. But on the other, so that's the one side. On the other side, it was a freaking blast. I never didn't have fun writing this novel. I think it was the easiest novel I ever wrote in terms of just like the daily output. I started it during NaNoWriMo. Was this 2 years ago now, right? And in November, I won, quote unquote, won NaNoWriMo with the 50,000 words. I took a bit of a break through the holidays and then just jumped back in. I don't remember how long it took altogether, and I don't remember the exact word count, but I know it was more than the final novel that we published. I want to say it was around 115 to 120,000 words that I wrote in roughly 3 to 4 months. And it felt like every day I knew exactly what I was going to write, which doesn't always happen. I'm sure you both know that sometimes you sit down and you're just not sure where you're going next with something.
Rather hit my head into the computer and I'll get a better result some days.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote 150 words today for the novel I'm working on, I don't think I ever wrote only like 100 words when I was working on Tommy. It was just a pleasure. And a lot of that had to do with the clarity of the vision. You know, we knew exactly what we were doing. We knew exactly what we wanted. I don't think there was ever any question as to that, unless you could remember any. But I think we were pretty clear from the get-go. There were a couple of things that we had to, you know, one of the funniest for me was I think I might have written about 3 chapters, and we didn't, maybe one of the only things that we didn't clarify early on was what genre or what audience this was for specifically. And I had walked in kind of under the assumption that it was more for an adult audience, I guess, people our age who were looking for a little bit of a nostalgia hit. And I think it was the first 3 or 4 chapters. I sent you something, Tony, and you loved it. But your one note was, ease up with the curse words, man. I was like, oh. And, you know, that's, I think, when we cleared up, you know, when we got it a little clearer that, okay, this is going to be more of a, you know, adult, young adult sort of thing. It's going to be good for all ages is what we were shooting for. I never wanted to, and I don't think I did, I never wanted to dumb it down for a younger audience. I wanted it to feel like, you know, this is a poor example, but it's the only thing coming to mind, like a Pee-wee's Playhouse episode where it's definitely like, you know, adults can watch, can read it and enjoy it. Younger adults can read it and enjoy it. And like, you know, I don't think there's any barriers there in terms of age group. I hope.
No, definitely. I mean, throughout, I mean, there's very little that, you know, a parent would feel uncomfortable sharing their kids. And likewise, you know, if a kid were to pick it up and read it, they would probably feel comfortable sharing it with their parents. And that was the goal, was to reach as many people as possible. But ultimately, this was for people my age, you know, and to reminisce, you know, and to kind of get dropped back into those shoes back in the 80s. And with the hope that the younger readers would be like, wow, that was a really awesome time. You know, that was a time that just is almost mythic, you know, that can't be real. And Anthony did a really good job of creating that whole world and fleshing it out with all the locations and characters and side characters, and turned out really well.
The scope definitely exploded on me a little bit. We didn't know, like going in, we didn't know it was going to be a multi-POV sort of experience. But pretty early on, I realized that it couldn't be just Tommy the whole time. I wanted there to be more of a world around him. I think one of you kind of mentioned earlier about the reality aspect of it. That was important to me, that there was a grounded reality with real people, real characters, real problems to kind of be the catapult.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even guessed at that, but you're absolutely right. You know, once Tommy starts his road trip, you have to check back in at what's happening at home. I think it loses, you know, so much of the setup at the beginning that where you kind of create this domestic problem. Like, we need to know how that plays out. Like, that's how not just Miranda, but how his parents get fleshed out and what makes us give a shit what they do at the end. I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, we're going to get lost in that kid's fantasy world. And, you know, like Brennan said, it's not going to hit you in the gut because there's still problems going on.
Right.
And if you cut that layer out, it's not as powerful. All right, so moving on to your shirt, I've been wanting to ask about it. Can you tell us about it? And for the audio viewer listeners, tell us what it looks like.
Mine?
Yeah.
It's I don't remember where I got it, but it's Skeletor as like a little Munchkin Skeletor or something. I'm getting like Funko Funko sort of vibes off of it almost. I want to say it was in a box at some point, like one of those mystery boxes or something, but it just felt appropriate to wear for tonight.
And yeah, because the villain is that's definitely the basis of the villain, right?
Right.
Okay, I don't know what else would be, but yeah, that's perfect because Skeletor was kind of like who I was seeing when I was reading. I'm gonna fuck up Skull. I'm not even gonna try. I'm gonna mess up. Can one of you pronounce it?
Skulligar.
There we go. Yeah, Skulligar. He was kind of funny, and he was kind of at the end reminded me of like, the devil trying to be like, listen, man, you're one of us. Fuck God, Man, I might possibly risk a good impression on you, Tony, because I don't know where you stand with certain things, but
I hear. Yeah, that he obviously he was, but I like that Anthony kind of took him later on in a more darker direction, to where you fear him. He's more than just a bumbling, evil doer. He's kind of he feels like a threat, to everything that Tommy's going through. So that made me very happy.
It was funny when he called him Scully, when Tommy called him Scully.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was like through dialogue in his head early on, I think, right? Or later on too, maybe.
Yes, later on in the arcade, I remember specifically.
A couple of things on that note. So while I was writing, I used to watch Masters of the Universe and everything when I was younger, but it's been a while, and I wanted to sort of refresh my memory as I was starting this project. So I started watching the reruns of it, and early on, I took the inspiration from the cartoons a little too much to heart, and Tony had to pull me back to the ground on that one. He did so with a very clear message of, hey man, that's twice now that someone was shot in the ass with a laser beam. let's tone it down. That's a little too much comic relief, maybe. Like, yeah. And honestly, it was that moment where it's like, maybe I should, because I was really trying to make the characters at first like sort of reflective of the campy vibe of the cartoons. And I left a bit of that in there, but I did also try to sort of twist it back around to get those darker elements as well that you're talking about. And then the other thing I just want to mention in regards to Skulligar's character, just a funny little anecdote. My dad read the novel, and so one of the things I always try to do is kind of see characters' points of views from their own eyes. I try not to just 100% vilify anyone. I want there to be balance to character, so we get different perspectives and whatnot. And apparently I did that pretty well with Skulligar, because at one point my dad was like, oh, so he's like a good guy trying to help Tommy out, right? Because of that one conversation near the end. Totally got my dad. It's like, yeah, he's trying to help him.
You pulled the wool over his eyes.
That's hilarious. Brennan, go ahead, buddy.
I'm curious as to, now that the project is complete, do you view this as standalone or something that you guys would jump back into, maybe another novel or maybe some other sort of media tie-in down the line?
Well, we talked about it, and there are ideas there for going back and revisiting Tommy's world. I suppose it depends a lot on different things. The success of the book a little bit, but also probably if just down the line we were like, let's do that again, let's get back there again, I'd probably be all for it. So.
I am, again, sort of I'm always of two minds of everything. I can never make my mind up about things. I would absolutely love to do another one. One thing, there's something I worry about going back to that universe, and I don't know that I ever even talked about this with Tony necessarily, because Tony did send me a little bit of an idea. I believe it was like how the next novel would possibly open, were we to do that. And even more than that, actually, yeah, you had a little bit of a plot line going on where what might happen. I don't think I'm spoiling anything necessarily. If you guys think it's a spoiler territory, cut it right the hell out of this podcast, man. But
I totally changed that. I totally all that. You can throw that out the window now.
What's that?
The whole plot line that I sent.
Yeah. Well, the first novel, I don't think it's that much of a secret. People have talked about it in reviews and whatnot, that there's ambiguity. And that was something that Tony and I talked about in great detail going into this novel, is how we were going to handle the fantasy elements. And we decided wholeheartedly, this should be ambiguous in terms of what's real and what's not real. And I like to think that we planted enough seeds that if anyone wanted to say 100% that was real, they could, and they could provide evidence for that. And if someone wanted to say, no, man, that was 100% in his head, they could present evidence for that. I was hoping that there would be clearly two sides to that you can argue either one, and either one could be correct or incorrect. And I'm hesitant to say whether or not there was ever an intention one way or the other. So that's my one worry, is that going into a sequel, we might have to decide whether or not it was ambiguous or not.
You know how you can avoid all that and keep it ambiguous with a sequel?
How's that?
Well, if there's more than one dimension, you talked about that. What if one day Tommy just woke up in their universe?
Well, there's that, like he said, yeah, we were very careful, and particularly Anthony with making sure there wasn't too much one way or the other. Yeah, I kind of agree that if you ever went back there, you'd probably have to choose. I know what I would choose. I don't know if that would be what he would want to choose, though.
And I'm totally not against that, making that choice. I'm just saying that's in my mind, that would be the big hurdle to a sequel. It's absolutely a scalable hurdle, though, I think. That was the longest answer to a simple question ever, wasn't it?
I like it, though. You said, I hesitate to come down on one side or the other, and I'm kind of glad, because I don't want to hear the author's opinion on whether it was real or not, because I kind of have my opinion, and I don't want yours I don't want to know yours, just in case it differs from mine, if that makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense. And I approach most of what I write in the way that, I used to be an art student, in high school, college, and that was one of those things that you'd hear a lot you hear it more from visual artists than you do from writers. Writers want to tell you exactly what they were intending and exactly what they think about it. Visual artists often don't. They'd rather say well, what do you get from this? And whatever you get from this is correct. I try to approach most of my writing in that way, where I'm not in a huge hurry to explain anything. I want people to sort of get what they get out of it. If it's not what I intended, it doesn't really matter. I forget the name of that particular type of analysis, but there's a name for that in the literary criticism. But I don't necessarily want to impose my vision. It exists now for other people. What I think doesn't matter very much. But I do like talking about Easter eggs. I'm more than happy to point out Easter eggs that are in there at any point.
Brendan, you and I, when we were talking about this book, specifically talked about references to his family, real life names being brought into this, and you haven't covered that yet. So why don't you cover that?
Oh, I don't have a question so much there. I just, Tony, I thought it was very interesting once we got to the acknowledgement section at the end to find out how many of the characters sprinkled throughout were named after family members. If you want to talk about that at all.
Basically just it felt like if this was ever going to be, if this don't be the only piece of literature that ever came out that I was associated with, I wanted there to be something referencing people that mean the most to me. And of course, their characters are totally different than the people that the names are associated with, but just the idea that there are characters in there, and their names are represented by these characters. It was just a fun idea, but also very meaningful to me. My name could be changed. I didn't want my name in there particularly, but those people that meant something to me, and maybe even Anthony put some names in there that were meaningful to him. I never actually asked him that, I don't think.
I don't think I did.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. Sometimes I do that kind of stuff, like old teacher names. I'm actually, in the novel I'm writing right now, I used a couple of my old teachers' names because there's a lot of high school stuff in it. But yeah, in this one, I don't believe I did. That was one of Tony's requests early on, was to get those names in there. And I know Tony, that you've made this point in another podcast, and it bears repeating, that though the plot is based on an idea of yours and something that sort of happened, with the character creation contest, and it was inspired by that, the character is not Tony. And it's sort of, there's similarities other than like the setting and in the house and the dead ends and things like that. The similarities end there in terms of the character. Like I created the characters as I was writing. I didn't necessarily, I wasn't trying to create a facsimile of Tony as a child or anything like that.
Right.
But
it'd be a pretty boring novel otherwise.
Some cool stuff though, like the dead ends in that particular neighborhood and the roller rink. Those are real fixtures from his childhood.
Oh, nice. So what else, if anything, do you guys want to tell us about this book as we start to wrap things up? I don't want to miss any opportunity from either one of you. If you have anything that you want to discuss about it.
I'll point out something I think is kind of fun, and it, again, kind of like an Easter eggy sort of thing that people who are reading may enjoy. The prologue to the novel is based on the mini comic that Tony wrote.
Ooh.
So Tony wrote and created the mini comic before I wrote the prologue, and then at the end of writing, I decided to tack on a prologue, and I was like, oh man, that would be really cool to kind of take the storyline from the comic and get that in there somehow.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from.
That's really neat.
Yeah, a couple of things I just think are interesting, and if they somehow spoil something, we can cut this out. At one point, we were talking about whether or not Fierce Phantos was more than just an android. He could have been, at some point we put in there, or Anthony put in there, that he reveals that he's actually a young man also, that's hiding behind this facade of an android. And it was pretty powerful. But we talked, a lot about that, and I had to read it several times just to, I guess, see how I felt about it after, fitting it into the story, and we ultimately took it out. But it's just an interesting, pretty huge thing, to reveal that, he's actually a young man also.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was one of those transformative scenes that really would have changed a lot, kind of.
Yeah.
But cutting room floor, deleted scene stuff.
And then also, I had at one point, I was trying to think what would be a logical, reasonable explanation that Tommy could be given that what he's experiencing is real. There's perfectly logical explanation for why it's not. But I wanted the other side to be represented pretty well also. And I had this long, lengthy, I was doing all kinds of research. Here's and I think I might have sent you some of that stuff about alternate realities and string theory. We were going pretty deep into this. And ultimately, though, he tidied it up quite a bit by just having Maddie kind of delve into one of the issues of a comic book and how, the comic book company introduced, the idea of multiple realities or alternate universes. And it's like, yeah, that's way better.
Well, it felt appropriate with having the comic book stuff in there as it was. And, I don't think we said what the utterance is in particular or, what it could mean. But that moment when Maddie kind of explains all of that and they say something, did we say what it was? That moment?
I don't recall. So I'm going to say no.
Okay. Yeah, I won't say it then just to avoid anything that people wouldn't want spoiled. But in that moment, I thought it was like a fun, you could take it two ways. You could take it as like a fun little, just an aside sort of thing, but it does open up that idea, as Brennan mentioned earlier, of the multiverse, and in a sense suggests that they're not on the same Earth as us. Which gave me a loophole that if I messed up any of the retro items, if there are any anachronisms in the novel, hey, doesn't matter. It's not our Earth. It's fine.
Brilliant.
I love it.
Requests to change some things because they came too late, particularly Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles items.
Is that in the hardcover or not?
No, we took those out.
Okay.
Like appropriate thing, age appropriate things there, the decade appropriate.
Yeah.
It was cool that you guys referenced him with was it Maddie, the comic book owner?
Yes.
It was really neat how you guys were talking about the first issue and how it was the comic was the source for the cartoon. I just like shit like that. So for me personally, that's why I liked it a whole lot. But let's jump to where can people follow the two of you? Whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead.
You can find me on my webpage, so anthonyjrapino.com, easy enough. Most of the links you can find through there. And otherwise, you can usually find me under the name, if not Anthony J. Rapino, then under the name Candy Corn Apocalypse, which one or the other will be my usernames on like things like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. I'm all over the place with that stuff. Sorry.
Is that your ringtone?
That was a text message. The Zelda whistle.
Very nice.
Speaking of throwbacks, that's awesome. Tony, where can people follow you?
Probably the best place would just be my website, retrodays.org, retro-days.org. I go by Vaporman87 there. And then, I can be reached through the official website of the novel also.
Excellent. Tony, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we pretty well covered everything. I will say one thing that we were talking about the discussion between Maddie and Tommy about what he's going through, and I really love. This is what Anthony does really well, is sneak little funny tidbits that make you, just kind of ease the tension a little bit and make you giggle a little. And they're discussing the whole idea of are these characters intruding in your reality? He's talking about the alternate universe. He says, well, maybe in an alternate universe, Masculon is named He-Man. That was just such a perfect thing for me to read. It was just like, that's the perfect way to sneak that in right there.
Yep. Yeah. You did a good job with that. Anthony, do you have any final thoughts?
I had a great time as usual. I appreciate you both having me on. I wish I had better bourbon with me. Drinking bottom shelf tonight, but otherwise, yeah, it's a great time.
I had fun too. My final thoughts are really appreciate the opportunity to read the book. Very, very grateful for the amazing package you sent. And Brennan, what are your final thoughts, sir?
I'm also thankful for your time. I loved this story, and I hope a lot of people will check it out. I'm also very impressed that we managed to get through an hour without too many Tony versus Anthony mix-ups. I thought that went very well.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, agreed. Everyone, next episode is episode 158 with Gwendolyn Keist. Stay tuned for that. And listeners, viewers, you have many choices in podcasts. Thank you for picking us.